We have so many baby boomers with a 401k. They're now approaching retirement. And if they're in buy, hold, and pray methodology, what would you say to them if they just, they buy, hold, and pray? They got 60-40, 60% equity, 40% bonds. That's about all they know. What advice would you give them, Bert? Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. And we have a great show. We always have great shows, but we have a longtime friend of the Rich Dad program. His name is Bert Dohmen. He and I are both from Hawaii, and we're the old timers out there in Hawaii. But before I do that, I want to show you my new Trump jacket, my sequins jacket, and the back of it, Make America Great Again. And so I was out in Tulsa with Eric Trump, Bert. And this woman is selling Trump stuff, and she's creaming it, man. I think she did 6 figures in 1 month. She was like killing it, but it's just nice stuff. Anyway, welcome to the program again. And I want to talk about Bert's newsletter, which I subscribe to. This is the Wellington Letter. I highly suggest you read it, because if you really want to get away from the fake news, the Wellington Letter will give you the straight scoop on the markets and the economy. It's micro and macro, and it's essential reading to stay abreast of what's going on in the world today. So I really respect this letter. And then Bert's headlines are Signs of a Liquidation of a Bear Market. Signs of a Liquidation of a Bear Market. So Bert, welcome to the program. And what does that mean? Signs of a liquidation of a bear market?
Well, actually, it's slightly different. It's called a liquidation bear market. That's different than a bear market because of different other factors. This is a liquidation of big stock portfolios. And it started actually in mid-December. If you want to get the biggest turning point, that's when Tesla made its top. We call it that top to the exact day of Tesla is that Tesla is going to go down over 50%. We're almost there. So, these are the warning signs. So the big portfolios were liquidated while all the shills of Wall Street were on financial TV telling people to buy. And it was an easy story because the election was won by a person who probably will be the greatest president in the history since George Washington. And so this is fantastic long-term news. But in the short term, when you make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. And this is where we are now. And the portfolios, stock portfolios, people never look at the valuations. We had the most overvalued market probably since 1929, depending on what statistics you use. And overvalued, and top of that was over leveraged. People are no longer satisfied with just a simple ETF. No, they have to have double leverage and triple leverage. And then they have their 1-day ETFs, so 1-day options. The speculation has been insane. Absolutely. And now we're seeing the liquidation of this insane speculation. That's a lot of money to be lost. And of course, the smart insiders, the big smart money, they sell ahead of time while they're encouraging the public to buy stocks. Okay. You remember, in a bear market, somebody has to hold the stocks. Okay. So it's either Wall Street is going to hold them or the average investor is going to hold them. And Wall Street doesn't want to hold them on the way down. So they have to continue, as Joe Granville used to call them, the bag holders. Okay. The average investor is the bag holder. He has to own the stocks all the way down. And at the bottom, they have to be told, oh, it's the end of the world. This is terrible. Everything's going to melt down. And this is where the big smart money then goes to buy. But by that time, your stock portfolio may be down 50% or even 80%. Usually the big bear markets have resulted in one index, usually the NASDAQ, to be down 80%. People have to remember that. And you may think that you're going to ride out a bear market, But when you're down 80%, you're going to chicken out. You're going to
Yeah.
sell at the bottom.
So that's
And
why I want to say this is the Wellington letter. Make sure the headline again. I strongly suggest people get it, read it, understand it, because you have a line here that says, investors who are easily swayed by the experts in media should do their own homework. And so what you're saying, it's the media is not as forthright as it should be.
Well, the masses, there's an old saying, the masses are asses. The masses are always used as fools, okay? And we saw that again, not only in the stock market, but look at what happened with COVID. The masses were told they got to have that vaccine because it's so effective and it's so safe, and all of that was baloney. Now we know it was totally unsafe. In fact, the latest statistics have that 16 million people died from the COVID vaccine. That's incredible. 16 million people were killed with that hoax of the vaccine. We kept telling people in the Wellington letter, said, don't get the vaccine. Don't listen to your doctor, because all the doctors, they were either in on it or they were too dumb. They don't read, and they didn't even know what mRNA was. I knew what mRNA was for over 20 years because medicine is kind of my hobby for the last 50 years. My degree is in chemistry. It's not in business, not in economics. Okay, so I know a little bit about science, although I don't claim to be Mr. Science as Dr. Fauci. Fauci is the biggest fraud that we have in the field of medicine. Okay, and hopefully he will get prosecuted. But you always have to go against the masses. When the masses are always, I heard people coming to me, oh yeah, I got my third booster shot. Well, now we know from scientists, they say if you have had 3 booster shots, you will probably have bad side effects for the rest of your life, or maybe even you will get turbo cancer. Turbo cancer, it goes from 0 cancer to deathly stage 4 cancer in about 3 months. That's turbo cancer. So these are all the side effects of what was considered a safe vaccine. In fact, there wasn't a vaccine at all. mRNA does not qualify as a vaccine. It's a gene therapy. And we warned about it in the Wellington letter. So not only do you get good economic analysis that's contrarian, the best investment timing advice you can get in the world, but you also get good, necessary medical information sometimes. We don't tell people you should do this and this, take these and these pills. No, everybody has to make their own decision. But we on January 26, 2020, we did our research showed exactly that this was a Wuhan laboratory leak. The article was from India, from a magazine in India. We read a lot of the foreign press, and because the U.S. press is it's propaganda, it's not worth reading. And this even had the name of the top 2 scientists at the Wuhan lab. And it said exactly that was gain of function research financed by the USA, by Dr. Fauci and his people, and Darcy. And they even had tried to get DARPA, which is the secret intelligence agency for the Defense Department. They tried to get involved in that, but it refused. So, this is the kind of information that you want. We do so much research, the best research money can buy, and
so
it save your life, not only your portfolio.
Yeah. So that's why get Bert's letter, because I follow what he says. And what you said years ago is coming true now, is because so many young men, young athletes who took that vaccine are now crippled. And
yes,
I hate to see the lawsuits coming out on that one.
Yeah.
But it was a complete hatchet job on the young people with that Fauci and his vaccine.
Yeah. But Robert, still today, even today, 6-month-old babies are getting the damn vaccine. It's incredible. There's a Nobel Prize winning scientist, Luc Montagnier, in France. He discovered the HIV virus, so he was no dummy. And he refused to call it a vaccine. He said it's the poison. He always said the poison, because it was a poison, you know? And here, our big pharma and all of our doctors, or 90% of the doctors, tell you, oh, you got to get the vaccine. I have friends that are doctors. They told me all the time, oh, you got to get that vaccine. I said, no way, you're not going to get that poison into me. And so now, of course, 5 years later, they say, yeah, I was wrong on that. Yeah, boy, how many people died because he was wrong?
But
This is
how many doctors were shut down because they tried to warn people? Do you know what I mean?
exactly.
There were a lot of good
There's a whole
doctors.
list of them. Yeah. There's a Dr. Bridle, and he was in San Francisco working, and he got fired because he and his team discovered that the vaccine causes microclots. And he wrote an article about the microclots. They get into the microcapillaries of your body, and then they grow, and they shut off the microcapillaries, and then they keep on growing. And it's the blood clots that this vaccine causes. They kill you. It causes myocarditis. It causes brain cancer, glioblastoma.
Right. Let's get back to the markets, okay?
Yeah.
Because that's what the Wellington is most
Sure.
thing for. And right now we have, my generation, a boomer generation, we're the first ones with a 401k. And, there's been saying that this market crash is going to be a big one and all this. So, following the Wellington letter of advice, I was talking to several people, some relatives included, and their 401k is tanking and they can't retire now. So what would you say to people like that who blindly trust, TV, what do you call that, financial advice, or, the stock market's up or stock market's down? What's going to happen to this boomer generation, the first one with a 401k or defined contribution? It's called the defined contribution pension plan. The older generation, my parents' generation, had defined benefit pension plan. But the boomer generation is the first one since 74 with a defined contribution. And I've been writing about this for a long time. I wrote this book here, Rich Dad's Prophecy, about the biggest stock market crash in history coming. And I think it's coming right now. So that's what I want to talk to you about, because I talk to so many boomers who are saying, well, don't give me any bad news. Well, if it saves your butt, then that might not be bad news. So what would you say to a boomer or anybody with a 401k or IRA or something like that, who's depending upon the stock market performance to carry them into old age?
Well, the first thing I would say, you take charge of your own investments. Do not depend on other people that have an axe to grind. For example, money managers can never tell you to get out of the market or get conservative in the market or buy bonds instead of stocks. Don't touch stocks. No, people are greedy. We all have emotions. And when you let your emotions make your investment decisions, you're going to lose a lot of money. So you have to get the emotions out. That's the difference between smart professionals and the average investor. The smarter professional has found out over years, as I have. I've been in the markets for over 50 years, and you find out that you got to shut off your emotions. You have to read. I always tell my grandchildren, I've got 5 beautiful grandchildren, and I always tell, read. If you want to be a leader, you have to be a reader.
So when we come back, again, this is the Wellington letter here. And you have here, you mentioned some words to me, which I think our leaders be, because especially my generation, 401k guys, you talk about a death cross. Okay, when I come back, I'm going to ask you, what is a death cross? And the other thing is you have disaster stocks in your letter here, and you call them, disaster stocks. So I'm going to ask you when you come back, what's a death cross? DEATH. And what makes in your category a disaster stock? We'll be right back with Bert Dohmen. He's going to answer what a death cross is and what disaster stocks, how he classifies a disaster stock. We'll be right back.
Are you getting richer or poorer? Because right now, the rich are getting richer while everyone else falls behind. Why? Fake money. The government prints trillions of dollars, inflating your savings while the rich move their wealth into gold and silver. Gold is surging, silver is skyrocketing, the smart money isn't waiting, they're getting out of dollars before the next crash. And here's what most people don't know. You can legally move your IRA or 401k into gold and silver, 100% tax and penalty free, with my friends at Priority Gold. This is how the rich shield themselves. They don't save fake dollars, they save real money. So don't wait. Get Priority Gold's free wealth defense guide now and see how to move your savings into something real. Text GOLD to 24999 or go to PriorityGold.com right now. Text GOLD 24999 or visit PriorityGold.com and get your free, no obligation wealth defense guide. Because waiting makes you poorer, taking action makes you rich.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Today, our guest is a longtime friend from Hawaii, Bert Dohmen. He still lives in Hawaii, but his homes all over the world. But also, he's a publisher of this Wellington letter, which I subscribe to. And that's because he says you should read, but the question is, what do you read? And I love the Wellington letter because it gets to the point. It's simple. It's good enough for me to understand. But he has a couple of statements in this month's Wellington letter called the Death Cross. And he talks about disaster stocks. So I'm going to ask Bert, what is the death cross, and why should people pay attention to disaster stocks, or what classifies them in your book? Because that's what you are the best at. For 50 years, you've been giving this advice out, but the average person doesn't have your expertise to analyze a good stock or a bad stock. So first of all, Bert, what's a death cross?
It's a very simple way to measure the weakness or the strength of the stock market. You take the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. When they cross on the way down, that's a death cross. So that means that the bull market is over. When they cross back up again, then it means the bull market is probably in effect. It's very simplistic. Wall Street likes to have terms like that. We make it a little bit more precise with our technical analysis. We use advanced technical analysis, and that includes volume, not just price.
So when you see the death cross happening, what fires off in your brain? 50 years of experience, it means more to you than a guy like me.
Yeah, well, this time the death cross took place about 3 months after we gave our sell signal on the market. So you're late by 3 months. It's a very late signal. By that time, your portfolio is way underwater. Right now, anybody who bought stocks after the election is underwater, probably underwater with the stocks that they bought. And it's human nature not to sell any stock that they hold at a loss. Because as somebody on CNBC said, I think last week, he said, if you don't sell a stock you have at a loss, you don't have a loss, which is ridiculous. Your loss is there, whether you take it or not. And what I wrote in the Wellington letter not long ago is the first loss is your best loss. That's an old trader rule. If you're a professional trader, you say the first loss is the best one, and because from then on, the losses just get bigger and bigger. And you never want a small loss to turn into a big one.
Good. Again, this is the Wellington letter. When Bert says you got to read, I'm saying, as a friend of Bert for years, this is the letter I read if you just want to get to the point as fast as possible, because I don't have time to peruse all those magazines and things like that. So how do you rate a disaster stock? How you have that little category?
Well, the disaster stocks, you've seen many stocks, popular stocks, okay? Suddenly in the morning you wake up, they open up 20 or 25% down from the close the prior day. That locks in all the people who bought that stock, because now they're sitting there. The day before they had a nice gain on the stock. Now they wake up and they have a big loss in the stock. Okay, that locks them in. So then these people become bag holders. They hold that stock. It's down 20% now. Eventually, it's down 30, down 40%, down 50%, down 80%. They hold it all the way down because they're locked in with a loss, and they take that advice from TV. Don't sell a stock you have at a loss because then it's not a loss. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you analyze it. The good thing about Bert is he analyzes the stock for you, and he'll explain to you why it's a disaster stock. So I love about you're not just giving do this, do that. You actually analyze why a stock is a disaster. So I'm doing my best. If you're going to read, this is Wellington letter here. Fabulous, fabulous information. This is my biggest question of all, not the biggest, my concern. We have so many baby boomers with a 401k. They're now approaching retirement. And if they're in buy, hold, and pray methodology, what would you say to them if they just, they buy, hold, and pray? They got 60-40, 60% equity, 40% bonds. That's about all they know. What advice would you give them, Bert?
Of course, I don't know what people have in their 401ks. In fact, there was a time when I was asking everybody, just out of curiosity, what do you have in your 401k? And I did not find one person out of maybe 100 people that I asked that knew what they had in their 401k. And I would even then ask, but is it stocks or something related to stocks or related to bonds? They didn't know.
No.
So this is how little attention people pay to their life's investments, to their life savings. You cannot survive that way. So right now, if I had been asleep while the market tanked over the last 3 months, then I would sell everything. Everything. I wouldn't even pick and say, I'll hold this and I'll sell this. No, sell everything.
Wow.
Then you watch it from the sidelines. It's a lot cheaper to watch from the sidelines, and the commissions are basically zero nowadays. So it's not a matter of commission. It's just a matter of handling.
Okay, I need to add that we don't give financial advice here. That's Bert's advice, but I'm soliciting it from him because I think he and I share the same concern. There's a lot of people, if this bear market continues, will get wiped out. And does that concern you too?
It's very concerning, but people still have a chance now. They have losses, but they can keep it at that level by selling, and then they will have some way to sleep at night. But if your portfolio sinks every day, and I wrote that a few months ago, I said I've never seen such massive high volume selling in the market as we saw since the election. It's incredible. And so that shows you that the big smart money was getting out. And then they generate a small rally. One day the Dow was up 500 points. And then everybody said, oh, bargain hunting time, and they gotta buy the dips. That's a favorite saying. No, don't buy the dips because you're going to be the dip. And so this is not what you want to do. Any advice that you get from TV, you should do the opposite or consider doing the opposite.
So, Bert, I'm going to sell some of your letters here. How much does a Wellington letter cost? I mean, because I agree 100% with you. You should read, but there's so much to read. There's so much, news, so much BS, and I love it because you just break it down to the nuts and bolts, the simple. So how much does it cost for a subscription to Wellington letter?
Well, it's very inexpensive for what you get because we put so much effort into it. And this is analysis and forecasts you will not find anywhere else. We use advanced technical analysis. Almost no one uses it because it's time consuming. It's very difficult. It takes you a long time to even learn it, so nobody does it. It's too difficult. But $750 a year, you get 2 issues per month. Usually they're about 20, 25 pages in length. So that's about, let's say 40, 50 pages per month. And that gives you everything you need. People say, yeah, I know when I get the Wellington letter, I got to make the next 1 to 2 hours free to read the whole thing, So that's what it is. It has to be worthwhile. Many newsletters I see, And I said, my God, I could write, not to read, but I could write this thing in 30 minutes. Well, to do the Wellington letter takes days. It's very, very hard work. Charts that you can't believe. The charts tell you everything, and we tell you things that you don't know. Like the Federal Reserve. Everybody's watching, what will the Federal Reserve do? But the Federal Reserve, the only reason we watch what the Fed will do is because they usually screw things up. Okay. The Federal Reserve has a mission to set interest rates. That should not be their mission, because they can't do it. They can't even forecast the economy. So how can they set interest rates? They say they are data dependent, which is also ridiculous. Data dependent? The data that you get today will have about 6 months of 6 to 12 months delay to get into the markets. So they're always going to be behind the curve. You want to be able to forecast the market like we do. When liquidity shrinks, liquidity consists of credit and the amount of money that banks are willing to lend out. So when Bert, that shrinks, the stock market goes down.
Yeah, Bert, how much again? How much for this? I'm helping you sell this.
The Wellington letter is $69 a month, auto charge. So that's the most popular option, And then we have trading services for short-term traders. They cost between $5,000 and $6,000 per year. Yeah. But they're well worth it, because one trade and you've got the whole your 1 year subscription fee back.
What I love about it, Bert, you are such an educator. I mean, you're not saying buy or sell. You're educating the logic that you follow inside of it. So again, with Rich Dad, we don't give financial advice, but exactly as you say, you've got to read. And I agree 100% with you. This is what I read, because it saves me a lot of time, a lot of headache, and I get through all the noise out there as fast as I can. So how do they get in touch with it? I'm really shamelessly selling it for you.
Yeah,
shamelessly selling it for you, Bert.
Let me just say this, Robert. You are so good. The first I heard of you, somebody sent me your book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was the first book, and I read the book, and he wanted me to criticize your book. I said, I can't criticize this. He says, totally right. But what you said about the Rich Dad and the Poor Dad. So you are the great educator, not maybe about the specific stocks and stuff like that, but you have saved a lot of money, and you've probably made people a lot of money indirectly. So how do people get it? They go to domencapital.com, and you see the logo in the background.
Wait, DOHMEN Capital. DOHMENS.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's DOHMEN. Okay, not AN. ENcapital.com. And all the information is there. We've got the testimonials from some of the top people that you would, like Neil Cavuto. He wrote years ago, he said, of all the newsletters I received, Bert Dohmen's Wellington letter stands head and shoulders above all others. That was a nice compliment from Neil Cavuto. And so, we have other people that professionals in the business that have made good comments. But that comes from, we don't get this information from a crystal ball. The office one time gave me a birthday present of a crystal ball, but it didn't have an on switch. So, but it looks nice on my desk. So what you want is impartial advice. If somebody manages money, forget it. He has a conflict of interest, even if he doesn't admit it. He has a conflict. Right. He can never say sell, because that means a lot of the managed accounts he has will leave. They say, well, if it's going to be a bear market, I don't need a money manager. Okay. So it's conflicted advice. You want people who have no conflicts of interest.
Right. And again, Rich Dad does not give financial advice. We don't tell you buy or sell, but we do encourage you to get educated. And I absolutely love Bert's newsletter here, the Wellington letter, because I get it in concentrated form fast for like $69 a month, and it can make you millions or also save you millions. So Bert, thank you for your contribution to education, financial education. And a fellow Hawaiian, aloha, bra.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wish you and your great viewers, a good bear market. I think it may be a short one, maybe deep, but it may be short because all the best policies that any human being could have are being implemented right now. We have a great team. I call it the dream team in Washington. And this is the first
President
time I
Trump,
think I've ever used that. Yes,
DJT.
Donald Trump. Donald
He's-
Trump, but he's not alone. Look at the people around him. What a cabinet he has.
Yeah.
These are people, they're not in it for their own money.
No, they don't need any more money.
No,
Hey, Bert,
exactly.
again, thank you for the years and years and years of friendship, support, and being one of my best teachers. So thank you, Bert. Take care.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank
Robert.
And we'll be right back with a final word from Rich Dad. Welcome back. I want to thank Bert Dohmen and his unbelievable, informative Wellington letter. Please get it. It's $69 a month. And if you don't get it, well, I'll pray for you tonight. I'll just say this because in 1974, I was getting out of the Marine Corps. And that was a year America shifted from a defined benefit, DB pension plan, to defined contribution pension plan, or a 401k or IRA. And that's what I'm concerned about. Is my generation, the boom generation, most of them have no financial access to financial education or information. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest disasters we've ever seen. So please, thank you for listening to The Rich Dad. Again, we don't give financial advice, but we do encourage you to get financially educated. So thank you from The Rich Dad Company.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.